Okay, so here we see some chips, and these chips are called ICs. IC stands for integrated circuits. Okay, so inside these circuits contains from thousands of transistors to even millions of transistors. Each chip will process the signal in the high frequency state. So these could be high frequency circuits, or some of the chips which are actually on the other side of this board. So if we remove this cover, we can actually see this. So here you can see that underneath we have the PCB board, the printed circuit board, and we can see more chips under here, and it's actually protected by this cover. So we see some of the chips here, and in some of these chips are the ADC, the analog to digital converter. Some other chips are DAC, the digital to analog converter. Also, you have power management chips to maximize the efficiency of the power consumption of the battery, because you have different functions going on. You're looking at videos, you're communicating, text messages, cameras, lights, all sorts of functions are happening at the same time or at different times. So the power management chip is a very, very important component of the motherboard, which is actually on the other side of this board, which I will show later. Okay, so let's look at some of these other components. So the main question here is why do we have all of these small rectangular pieces, these resistors, inductors, and capacitors? Why do we have all of this? And the main reason for having this is called impedance matching. Impedance matching controls the flow of the currents, controls the flow of the signals, so that the maximum amount of the signals will flow into and out of these chips. Okay? So impedance, as the word sort of indicates, it impedes the flow of current. So if you have high impedance, you will block the current. Low impedance, which will allow the currents to flow more easily. So resistor is also an impedance. Okay? A resistor, as the name implies as well, it will resist the flow of current. So if you have a high resistor or a low resistor, you can control these signals, and that's the basic idea of resistors, inductors, and capacitors. You're controlling the signal by controlling the impedance. Okay. All right. So I'll take apart the front part here and look at some more of the chips underneath. All right. So here, let's see. Okay, we can identify a few other components. Over here, this is the vibrator, and this is the camera, this is the flash, and for the flash to work, it requires several capacitors to store the charge, and then all of the stored charge is released at the same time, which creates that bright flash. Okay, so these are some of the other components here, and then let's look at some other components. Right. For example, here we see the speaker, and this is where the speaker is. You have the contacts over here, and on the other side of the phone, you can see where the signal is outputted. Okay. Okay. So if we go back to the motherboard, we can flip this over. We can actually disconnect this protective cover, leaving us with this board here. Okay. And in the vibrator that we saw before, we see the plus and minus contacts. These are the positive and negative contacts here. All right, and here we see the other side of the motherboard. We see more chips here, and this main chip, most of the main chips are protected by a metallic cover for electrostatic discharge, ESD. So what that is if there's a lot of charge, for example, a lot of charge could surge through the motherboard and could damage the chips. For example, lightning is a lot of charge that surges through a building, it could surge through your house, the electronics, and it can destroy some of the electronics. And therefore you need surge protectors. Similar thing here. In order to protect the chips, we need this kind of metallic cover. Okay? And if this does come into contact with a lot of charge, then the charge is distributed around this the surface of the metallic cover, therefore protecting the chip underneath. Here we have more chips with matching impedance networks surrounding it. A chip has many inputs and outputs, so you have several different passive components for impedance matching here. Right, and the main chips on this board are used for signal processing, for power management, and it's basically the CPU of the smartphone. Okay? And they're all encased underneath these metallic covers. One last thing to look at here are these traces. Okay, you can see these thin traces going from chip to chip, going through resistors, and so on. These traces are called transmission lines. And basically, you cannot connect one end of this line with the other end using a wire. A wire is considered a short, but these transmission lines are specifically designed. The width of the transmission line is specifically designed for the frequency of operation, for the thickness of the board, and what the board is made of. So the material of the board. All of those factors go into designing the width of these transmission lines. So that's an important factor in these motherboards. Okay. Well, I hope you learned a lot in this video, and we'll upload more videos on the theory of how these boards work.